Sonic the Hedgehog, the mascot, the Monkey King archetype that features two suns in some of his stories. Today we're going to focus more on some videos or scenarios that features two suns or the hint of two suns in Sonic and the character. We're going to revisit some of the other stories that we talked about in the previous video. I'm going to add a bunch of new ones in this one as well. We're also going to focus on the symbolism of this character and show how this character is playing out the sky. He's a personification of the sky in different stories. So you'll see the association with Sonic playing out the moon. Sometimes he's playing out the sun. We'll examine that a little bit more in this video. I do want to also add on other ideas of how he parallels other important Monkey King archetype characters where he's doing the same actions, walking on the water, walking on the sky. And then we'll see that he has parallels between some other mainstream Monkey King archetypes, not by coincidence. You can almost do a pair-to-pair with some of these characters in stories. But more importantly, like all Monkey King archetypes, these really are stories that are highlighting our pathway to enlightenment. They're spiritual stories encoded in characters. So you'll see that all these characters have the same parallel where they are, if they do things properly, they can obtain enlightenment. And we're going to see that this is paralleled in many of these archetypes, and Sonic holds this same idea to be true. So stay tuned. We're going to focus more on Sonic, the Monkey King archetype with two suns. So a little excited for today's video. Welcome back to the channel. This is Mark, aka Power Made Flesh of No Original Stories. My channel, we explore the concept that stories are a retelling of the stars. We are doubling downing on a video we made originally earlier this year with Sonic the Hedgehog, featuring this Monkey King archetype, but also we've been working on a series that points out the Monkey King association with there being two suns in the sky. Almost all of the stories that feature this two sun or binary have this play on the monkey, dragon, and the cat encoded in their stories. And we're going to double down on it. We're going to revisit the Sonic the Hedgehog series and its reference to the Monkey King and two suns in the sky.
There are two suns that shine down on us. As one sun sinks down below the horizon, the second simultaneously lights our sky. And so we never know not.
Never know not.
King and two suns in the sky. Let's go. First video, I did a little bit of background on the Sonic character, how he's a mascot, and mascots are timeless. The name Scott is associated with the time traveler. Great Scott, Scott from Avengers, the time traveler. The Scottish people are often associated with time traveling. Link from Zelda with his Scottish garb, for example. But I also outlined that he's a mascot, which has this association with May, the spring, May Scott. And the character, we should always think of him as playing out the sky. Sometimes he's playing the sun, sometimes he's playing the moon. But whenever you see characters in mainstream media, know that they're playing out the sky. And a mascot is a character that can change from story to story. Like the Zodiac Rabbit, they can have attributes of a bunch of different other zodiac signs. But Sonic, as we see in a different series, is playing out different sky stories in his character. And one recurring theme that we see, or one heavy association with Sonic, is his point to the Monkey King. The Monkey King is a character who's often an anomaly, a special, a character who appears to represent a reset or a change, kind of like the Avatar to take us to the new world. And this Avatar will be an anomaly, which is associated with Mercury, something special. So sometimes you'll see him having various different powers of Mercury, and not Sonic specifically, but the Monkey King kind of archetype, where they're a speedster, they can fly, they can be a polymorphic, they can phase, all different various aspects. But Sonic's has the Mercury powers where he's a speedster like the Flash, right? Or Quicksilver. But there's also different variations of what Sonic can do in the different series that he's in. But the most common known power he has is his speed. And with that being said, he's also a Monkey King archetype. They kind of do this play where he has the same kind of aura as the Goku characters from Dragon Ball. Not by coincidence, because these are all playing out the same kind of concept. Most mascots in mainstream media will be Monkey King kind of influenced. Our first video, I highlighted some scenarios where there seems like there's two suns being referenced in the Sonic series. We went over a comic book, which we'll get into a little bit more in this video. Keep in mind that comics are published by a bunch of different publishers for Sonic. So there's a bunch of different variations on Sonic comics. So sometimes the lore will even change. And this is a common theme with these kind of Monkey King archetypes. You know, just think about how many different renditions there are of Peter Parker comics or Spider-Man comics. You could have the Amazing Spider-Man running while the Spectacular Spider-Man's also running. There's so many different variations of stories to tell on this character because they're an archetype, more so than keeping their story canon, so to say. Same thing with Mario. Sometimes he's Bowser's his arch enemy, and then there's other scenarios where him and Bowser are working together in the sports games or in Mario Party or in Mario RPG. So these characters, their canon is not as important as more so what they represent symbolically. So with that being said, we'll get more into that Sonic comic. We also went over the hint of Shadow being Sonic's second son, right? They both go supersonic. And we went over the Shadow, the sun battling his shadow, as you see in some stories, Peter Pan and its shadow. Almost all these Monkey King archetypes will have a shadow kind of character. Spider-Man and Miles Morales, for example. But there's also some more symbolism of the shadow or the darkness that we see in these character archetypes, which we'll get into a little bit more in this video. But we also went over Tails playing the Sirius Dog Star. So you have, some people believe Sirius Dog Star is our binary. So you have Sonic, the sun, Sonic, and Sirius Dog Star paired up, the binary pair, the sidekick, the psychic. So that was interesting. We went over that, and we'll get a little bit more into that in this video. We also went over the mushroom planet that Eggman had to retire to, mirroring a bunch of other Monkey King kind of stories. Mario has the mushrooms. Thanos retires on a planet that has this kind of same scenario going on in the sky as the mushroom planet. And we couldn't confirm that it was a second sun, but there was a second body in the sky, maybe a second moon hidden on this planet. But the referencing of mushrooms is a common theme you'll see in these stories. Just think about if two nukes go off, right? We're getting the mushroom clouds. Same thing with two asteroids, the mushroom clouds. And that's all a play that mushrooms are psychedelics. Hinting and reminding you that you should be thinking about the mind. These stories are about your mind, or what is your mind perceiving of these stories. We also went over, there was a video game, Sonic Adventure, that was released on the Sega Saturn. No, excuse me, the Sega Dreamcast. Dreamcast being a play on the Dreamer, Morpheus, Mercury. A lot of video game systems have the play on Mercury, especially the N64. But yeah, that video game featured two suns, whether it be for the symbolism or more so just how the game ran. We went over. I mentioned before in previous videos that whenever you have two story that features the monkey, the dragon, or the cat archetype, you're going to get this play on two suns, or you could get this play on two suns, but also you may get the play on two moons. Sometimes from the darker's perspective, the dragon's perspective, there's two moons. But, you know, you can look for both as parallels, both being the same. Like, for instance, Starship Troopers, which we'll get into in a separate video, is the same kind of Monkey King archetype. Johnny Rico, John the Baptist, John the Monkey King, John Connor. John is the most common name of the Monkey King. But in Starship Troopers, there's a planet where they're fighting these bugs that are dragons, like, right? And it has two suns, but it also has two moons. And they go over the mind's effect on this movie in subtle ways. But we'll say that for another video. But always look for the two moons or two suns. And Aladdin, I did a video on Aladdin before. There's an episode where there's two suns. There's an episode where there's two moons. And then something like Star Wars, you have the two suns, right? And then you also have on Endor, they're battling on the moon of Endor. So you have a planet with a moon, and then the second moon, the Death Star, approaching, right? So you have two moons. And often when it's two moons, one of the moons will be artificial or created because of damage to the first moon. As we see a recurring theme in the Sonic series, the first moon gets damaged, kind of creating a second satellite eventually. But the reason why I'm bringing this up is because there's a lot of lore of Sonic that also has two moons. And one of the canons, or one of the lores that he comes from a planet called Mobius. And Mobius is associated with having two moons. You can see in this game, Sonic Advance 3, there's a stage called the Chaos Angel. and it looks like there's two moons. It could be two suns or two moons, but it looks like there's two moons in the background. And then we also see that there's another game called Sonic Air Riders, where he has two moons. And in this game, Sonic Air Riders, he's riding on a hoverboard. Often you will see that there's always going to be some kind of reference to the Monkey King character walking on the sky or walking on the clouds, like Back to the Future, Marty McFly, the rabbit and his dog. Same kind of archetype as Sonic, right? They go through portals. Well, he's on the flying hoverboard. Zip Zoolander and the game, the TV show, the Nintendo TV show, he flies on a Game Boy, or he hovers on a Game Boy. The Anakin Skywalker has a scene where he's hovering. They're always going to do this subtle Aladdin, for example, the character with the monkey on the shoulder, hovers on the magic carpet. So there's always going to be this subtle hint that these characters can walk on the sky. In Star Wars, for example, they're called the Skywalkers. Well, Sonic doesn't have this ability to fly, but they show him standing on Tails' airplane, right? So it's almost like he's walking on the clouds. So they do it in a nice, unique, and subtle way with these characters, but they're always going to point back to these characters walking on the sky. Well, anyway, in this game, Sonic Riders, he has a hoverboard, so not by coincidence. They do accomplish it with this character. Two moons. And I mentioned before in the game Sonic Adventure 1, there's two suns. This is not unique to Sonic. A lot of video games do this play on two suns. In Call of Duty, there's a bunch of people who have spotted glitches in the game or just programming in the game that highlights two suns. There's even a mission referencing to nukes being a play on two suns. And I've outlined before that sometimes in the darker perspective or the dragon's perspective, the two suns or two heavenly bodies or two new lights, nuclear, the word clear meaning light, lights will be referred to damage or destruction, like two asteroids. But in the monkey's perspective or the monk's perspective, it'll be two heavenly bodies that encode enlightenment. So even in these stories where there's two moons, it doesn't always have to be destruction. The one doesn't have to be a Death Star. It could be also just for higher consciousness, so to say. But in Minecraft, they even have people who've spotted two suns or glitches that show two suns in the game. So there's a lot of video games that references two suns. Sometimes it's symbolic. I've went over the Donkey Kong games. There's a land called Sun Island. In Marvel vs. Capcom 2, the female Monkey King. In a game called The New Age, her name is Sun. In a game called Infamous Second Son, it's a character who has powers or abilities, an anomaly. And there's no second sun in the sky, at least that I know of. But the game has all these hints of monkeys in it, right? So always look for these kind of combination, the monkey, dragon, and the cat, and two suns. But yeah, there's a bunch of lore of Sonic that features equal amount of lore that features two moons in it. So that's just something I wanted to highlight here with this. I've outlined before that Tails is associated with Sirius the Dog Star, which is associated with a binary. Some people also believe that Sirius is a binary associated with our sun. And, but Sirius the Dog Star, when played out in characters, is played out usually encoding the dog, right? Right now, there's a lot of symbolism with Sirius the Dog Star going on in our real world during the Year of the Snake. A bunch of movies came out this year encoding the dog, Doge in the White House, Superman and his Sirius the Dog Star Crypto, right? So I would be looking for something to go on with Crypto during the dog days of summer this year. And the movie, I think, comes out right during the dog days of summer. If you watched the trailer for this recent Superman movie, it starts off with saying, "Are you serious?" And then at the end, they even talk about the dog. So knowing that, I'll make a separate video on that, but I just wanted you to know that because it kind of ties into what we're talking about. But anyway, Tails is the Sirius Dog Star character, so he's playing out that. And I've outlined before that Sirius Dog Star in stories will usually be a portal opener or a character that can go through, kind of encode opening the wormhole, where the rabbits go down the rabbit hole. Sirius will be a character that opens a portal or travels to another dimension. But sometimes you'll see both of those characters associated with each other, like Rocket Raccoon in the Avengers is both the rabbit and the dog. They refer to him as a rabbit and a dog. And he's paired with Peter Quill, Peter Rabbit. I think their toy even comes together, right? But you have Sonic and Tails. So always look for this pair of the bunny and the dog, which is the play on the Lepus constellation. Marty McFly, the bunny who hops in and out of time with his dog. The dog is the first one to travel through time. Mega Man and his teleporting dog. Kamala Khan, she's both the monkey and the bunny with her teleporting dog. So always look for this kind of combination. Even Riddick, Chronicles of Riddick. Riddick's name is Richard Riddick, letting you know that not only is the monkey encoded in this character, but also the bunny or the rabbit. But he's paired with Sirius the Dog Star, and each of his stories is almost like he's in a completely different world. Sirius, right? He changes paradigms in each of his stories. But yeah, so Tails is Sirius the Dog Star, so you'll see a lot of symbolism in Sonic with the dog. Sometimes Sonic is known for loving hot dogs, but also loving chili dogs, right? Remember, I told you there's always this play with the Polestar or Polaris with these Monkey King characters. So he likes chili dogs, but also hot dogs. So you'll see a lot of symbolism with Sonic and dogs. And, you know, there's a term for the illusion of a second sun, like the optical illusion of a second sun called a sun dog. So you can kind of see the play on Sirius and Tails in the story with that, right? And then you have... you also have the Sonic always eating the dog and the dog pair right next to him. And then another way for saying dog, backwards is God, right? So just imagine the what could be alluded with the sun being paired with God, or the sun and God, right? So two lights in the sky, the sun and God, essentially. But we'll get more into this kind of concept of the dog. And we'll move later on in this series. I'm going to show you the association with the Wizard of Oz, the rabbit who goes down the wormhole with her dog, and then tie it into this character Sonic as well. So we'll get more into the God aspect, or the second son in Sirius Dog Star in that part of this video. But I've outlined that the Guardians of the Galaxy is playing the same kind of game. There's a video game I outlined in the first video called Star Fox that has to play on the dragon, the cat, and the dog. The girlfriend's name is Cat. The villain is a giant monkey. Sometimes you even find a brain. So it's really about consciousness. And then you're playing as this dog named Fox McCloud, who can teleport or go through wormholes. And, so essentially Sirius the Dog Star in a character. But that game, Star Fox 2, has a binary star system in there, or two suns. And the Star Fox characters parallel the Journey to the West kind of archetype, where he's surrounded by the monkey, the pig, all the animals from Journey to the West, the cat, and then Star Fox characters. And Guardians of the Galaxy, I mentioned before, you have Peter Quill, Peter Rabbit with Sirius the Dog Star, and there's a bunch of planets in that lore that features two suns. I think Xandar is one of the planets that features two suns. But there's actually a character in that story played by Harry Styles, right? The bunny, named Star Fox. So you see all these stories, right? It may seem like these stories are just giving nods to each other, but they're not. It's more so that these stories are encoding the sky in these characters, and the rules can't really change because they're constant. The constellations, they're constant stories to tell, or stories to tell. So you'll easily be able to find parallels in stories across the board because they're really just playing out the sky and characters. But just try to imagine these characters as playing out the sky, and you'll see like deeper perception of them. I'm going to get a little bit more into some ideas here, but I want to just kind of show you this kind of like real to kind of drive it home. Just knowing that Sonic is a play on the sun. In some stories it changes, right? Sometimes he's a play on him and Tails together, or kind of play on Sirius the Dog Star, which is a binary star system, but also some people think that Sirius is R binary. And you can see as they orbit each other, they speed up when they get closer to each other, and then they kind of slow down when they get further away from each other, right? So it's almost highlighting that, they're more powerful together. So I made that clip so that you can imagine that these characters are playing out the sky, various aspects of the sky and different stories that they're in. So I want to get back to the concept of two suns, right? So you see that Sonic and Shadow in the recent Sonic 3 movie, they both go supersonic. And supersonic is a personification of the enlightened or the golden child, the sun personified in the character. And now we have two of them, right? But also in this story, we're given the concept of two Robotniks. And in the last film, the second film, part 2, Robotnik becomes a giant or a titan, which is a personification of the moon. So we have two moons versus two suns, essentially, that's going on in the story. And depending on how grounded these kind of stories, these Monkey King stories are in reality, there may not be actually two suns in the sky. It may be symbolic, right? So we have the symbolism of the two suns in Supersonic and Super Shadow. But we're also given a scene where the moon is damaged. So the moon is like damaged where part of it gets cut off or breaks. So eventually that'll become a second satellite, essentially two moons. And they even do a quick snapshot of it at the end when they introduce a new character, right? And this is important because I've outlined that both the concept of two moons and two suns are in these kind of stories. I have an upcoming video on K-Pax, which is a Monkey King archetype with Kevin Spacey. And that story is about two suns, but also there's a scene where they show two moons. But we're shown that now they have a satellite, or the moon's damage will eventually cause a second body or a satellite. So in Sonic 4, I would assume that they're probably going to show two moons. But what also happens is in Robotnik's redemption arc, I told you Robotnik and Sonic are connected. They can't exist without each other. It's like Lex Luthor and Superman. You notice Lex Luthor has that kind of play on the first initial of both his first and last name being the same, like a Bugs Bunny, Marty McFly, Roger Rabbit, Mickey Mouse, Peter Parker, Octo Octavius. These are characters who go down a rabbit hole. They're connected. Even Lois Lane has that play. So you should always look at Lois Lane, Superman, which is Clark Kent, kind of the same kind of play on the first and last name having the same kind of starting initials. They are all connected. They're this trinity that can't exist without one another. They are connected. Well, Robotnik goes through this redemption arc and he sacrifices himself just like Shadow. But at the end, the explosion caused by Robotnik's sacrifice almost forms like a second sun in the sky. So it's very symbolic that this evil character who used to be a personification of the moon now became a second sun or a second light in the sky. And they do this scene at the end where they show this this perspective of this explosion in space at different parts of the world, day and night. And it kind of reinforces that, yeah, you're looking at them poking at the concept of two moons, but also two suns in the sky. So Robotnik's redemption arc, he does become essentially enlightened. And I've outlined before of characters who are Monkey King are not enlightened, having goggles on in the beginning of a story, and then as they go the right path, they no longer need the goggles. They can see, they can handle the light. And we see Robotnik right before he sacrifices himself, his goggles kind of come off. So I just wanted to highlight that. It'll be interesting to see if we get to see this light still in the sky in Sonic 4. This movie is grounded in supposed reality, so I don't think that the second sun will remain. But we now have this problem of there potentially going to be a second moon in the upcoming Sonic 4 movie, if there is a Sonic 4. So we'll see. But this just reinforces what I'm talking about. At the heart of these Monkey King stories, the monkey, the cat, the dragon, is this play on two suns in the sky, two moons. And sometimes they're symbolic, sometimes they're spiritual. But I think this has to do with our reality as well, as it's too much of a coincidence that this is a reoccurring theme in all of these different stories. So my apologies, we're going to have to cut the video here. I try to keep the videos under 20, 30 minutes. But I have so many more concepts to go over. In the next video, we'll focus on the enlightenment, the golden child, the rainbow, the chakras. We'll also focus on the comic book that features two suns in Sonic. We'll also touch more on some symbolism. And then this might actually be a couple of more videos. Then I also want to show you the Sonic's alignment with other Monkey King kind of characters, where he's parallel to Spider-Man, to Captain America, to Naruto. just to go down a list, we'll go down it. And then also to connect Sonic with the Wizard of Oz, which in some Wizard of Oz lore, there are 2 suns. And in other Wizard of Oz lore, there are 2 moons. So look forward to more on the Monkey King with 2 suns in the sky. I have a lot of other different stories to cover, but we'll come back to Sonic at some point and revisit the series.
Before we get started, does anyone want to get out?
Ready? Let's go.
Sonic, look!
There are 2 suns that shine down on us. As one sun sinks down below the horizon, the second simultaneously lights our sky. And so we never know not.